Welcome to Embrace the Grind, the show where we take a look at the world of business, finance, and entrepreneurship through the eyes of professional gamblers. And today, we are on location here in San Diego at an apartment building.
An apartment building that I actually own a piece of. I'm a real estate investor, bro.
All right, before we get into your life as a real estate investor, I want to bring up that we host a weekly talk on Clubhouse after the show. So if you hear anything in the show that you want to connect with us about or a previous episode, feel free to hit us up on Clubhouse. It's a very interactive experience. Link in the highlighted comment and description.
This week, we're talking to none other than Florian Sighe. We're going to be talking about how he made his transition from being a poker player to a real estate investor.
And how he went from zero to securing multi-million-dollar syndicate real estate deals in less than 2 years.
Well, let's get into the studio and we'll get into the embracing the grind with Florian Sighe.
I'ma give it all I got, like grinding every day, ain't no other way.
Episode 2 of Embrace the Grind. You excited for this, brother?
Man, you know, we're regular now. We're like some regular old people.
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row.
Schedule.
2 weeks in a row, we can call that regular.
Yeah.
We have a special guest today. Actually, they all are special. They should be at least, otherwise we're not going to have them.
Extra special to us.
Extra special to us because basically family came onto our radar maybe 8 years ago or so. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Poker player, and we are your coaches at one point. We staked you at one point, and now you are a real estate professional. Tell us more about exactly what you're doing these days.
Yeah, and then do you want to say my name?
Say my name.
Put some respect on my name.
No, we were just going to put it on the screen underneath. It was just going to say Florian Sighe.
Are we going to do a take 3 here? Is that
I think that's good. I like that. I think we should just roll with it.
All right.
Because it's real, you know? But yeah, Florian Sighe, man.
Mr.
Sighe, yeah.
Sighe.
Mr.
It's all
Florian Sighe
Uh-huh.
needs introduction because I didn't do that before. All right, so tell us some more about yourself, Florian.
Yeah, I mean, we met, I think it was 2012. I was playing poker in San Diego, kind of looking for what was next. Flash forward to today, now I do real estate. So obviously there's like a lot of stories in between.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to touch on your path from after college and your career path that you chose and how you ended up at real estate. So let's go back to when you first came onto my radar. And that was, we had a lot of mutual friends in the poker industry. Poker industry is obviously a small industry. And you reached out to me through friends and you said, do I know of anyone that would be interested in staking someone? And at the time I had never staked anyone before. And I had thought about doing it because one of the reasons why I really thought about doing it was because the games were so good in San Diego. And I was like, anybody that has any knowledge, because you were an online player, so anybody that has knowledge of online poker is going to be able to crush. So I knew that it was probably just a bankroll problem for you and everything was going to be fine. But I put you through the ringer. I made you make a resume. Do you remember that? Do you remember doing that?
Yeah, and I'll take it back to the beginning. I mean, I graduated college in 2009 from Santa Clara. Their finance degree, there were no jobs. So I was already playing poker. I was lucky I had a couple friends that were Supernova Elite on Stars. And they took me under their wing, coached me. So I was probably a year into playing through them, under them. And then Black Friday happened. And so I was like, I can move out of the country or move to Vegas, thinking that was like where the good games were, which we all know that, you know, tougher games are, right? So I moved to Vegas. I was there for 10 months and ultimately moved to San Diego with a couple friends, poker players. And yeah, we just kind of grinded it out. We were playing online, a lot of learning, grinding experiences. But probably after a year, you know, the online games were just tough back then. Just not a lot of options and rooms. So I went through this whole, you know, fork in the road. Do I get a job? Do I find something else? Do I go under stake? So yeah, I made a poker resume, but I also made like my first real resume. I remember I had my tech friends helping me out with that. But yeah, it was interesting because I remember I knew who you were. You had a community here in San Diego. felt it was probably prudent to ask you if it was, you know, do you know anyone staking, and kind of worked out, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I remember since I had no experience with it, I reached out to my friends and I was like, what do you think about this? And everybody said, don't do it. But at the same time, I knew that I wanted to kind of grow in terms of business. So I thought it would be a good gamble, especially when I asked you to make the resume. It's kind of a ridiculous request, you know, for a poker player.
Yeah.
But you went through all the steps. You proved that you were going to, you know, put your professional foot forwards. And I was like, I'm going to take a chance on this guy. And I'm not going to say that it was all ups, but there was definitely some downs. But overall, it was a great experience for myself. And you eventually moved on and dabbled a little bit in some business stuff, and then came back, and then Andrew took you under his wing. And I think you were more of a coach than I was. I was more of just the financier. Funny story about this, actually. I remember there was a time where I was putting you in some pretty big games in San Diego, like 1020, and it might have been 1025, but there was all these straddles, uncapped games. And you were playing on my dime, and I was playing in the smaller game. And everybody knew we were friends, you know. We didn't really like to play at the same table too much. So
Right.
I would put you in the big game and I would play in the smaller game. And there would be people that would tell me like, hey, I think you're as good as Flo. Like, you should be in that big game. Like, maybe Flo, if you ask nicely, maybe he'll stake you for the game.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. But there's obviously no room for ego in poker. And it was a good lesson for me to like, I thought that your online skills and like, I just wanted you to go through it more than myself. Not exactly sure why, but I felt like at the time it was the right move.
Yeah, and real quick, I was gonna say this story about the cool thing about you staking me is that we became best friends like that, like 3 weeks. It was just you were kind of exiting this period of life that I was entering or living, and so we just, you know, I kind of looked on you as like a big brother. But I remember Olga, something along the lines of you gave me, it was like some 5-figure amount, and she was like, are you sure you should be trusting this guy with this amount of money? And it was like 2 weeks into our arrangement.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what that's a big takeaway, just being in gratitude, and that was awesome. But yeah, I would say I've had some super rocky years in poker, just with downswings. A lot. I would say the mental game was like always my biggest crutch, kind of dealing with the swings and being broke and just not, you know, having money to do things in life.
I felt like when I played with you, I knew so much about you, because before I even knew who you were, I would play with you and I could feel a lot of the things that would come up for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, those are things that are always on display for people. Like, whatever's going on in your life, those things tend to come out at a poker table. So I felt like before you and I even got really close, I was already kind of invested in who you were, because I'd seen a lot of the things that you were going through, and I think it really allowed me to become closer to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking on what exactly was manifesting at the table, I remember one of the first times Andrew played with you, knowing that you were my horse and on stake, he sent me a message and he's like, I'm concerned. And
I was waiting for him to be honest with like
Yeah.
how he thought of it, like, this guy's crazy.
yeah, so, and he wasn't necessarily concerned with your playing ability.
Yeah.
He was concerned with your emotional,
Right.
you know, because you were obviously a very emotional person, and
Yeah.
it was manifesting in, you know, tantrums, for lack of a better word, at the poker table.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, I wanted you on stake regardless, because I thought you were talented. And I knew the biggest hurdle that we were going to face was you really conquering the mental part of the game and overcoming tilt. Obviously, you knew that was an issue for yourself as well. We also worked with Aaron Steinberg.
Yeah.
And you found that to be very beneficial for you as
Yeah,
well.
that was more under Andrew. But yeah, I think for me it was a lot of it wasn't even in game. I mean, in game, I just remember, you know, I'd be sulking. I don't think I ever got to the point where I was disrespecting a dealer or players. It was just more like, you could tell I was just my energy was so just, you know, like 1,000 pounds are on my shoulders, right? But it would carry forth to like after the poker or after the session, I would be home and just dark, you know, just and you know, this would carry on for, if I'm in a 2-week downswing, I'm just kind of dark for that whole period of time.
But that's one of the great things about poker, is that it allows you to have those things happen. It brings it to the forefront of your life. And if it's not working for you, there's nowhere to hide. It's right there. And I feel like, you know, even just yesterday for me, I had a really bad session, and like, I still struggle with the emotional aspect of poker. And it's so important for us to work through this because, you know, as we venture into the stock market and what you do in real estate, it's just, you're going to come up against adversity, and a lot of those things are going to happen in the same way. And I feel like we've had such a training ground in poker, you know, being kicked around, having those dark times, working through them. And so I just want you to know, like, I'm right there with you. It's something I still struggle with, but I've gotten a lot better, and I'm sure you're probably from those first days.
And for me, it's interesting with poker. I just feel like when the lowest of lows are in poker don't compare to anything else in life. For me personally, like, I've never been as mad at anything in life as I have after losing like a run bad session in poker. It's super interesting to me, which kind of sets me up to do well in other aspects, right? Like, if I've kind of already experienced the worst I can in emotion and figure out how to like come back the next day and go to work, it just helps me out. But I just think it's interesting in talking to other poker players who have transitioned out of poker. We just laugh at how much rage we used to have, whether it was online sessions or just live, and then things aren't working out, and like the scale of that rage compared to any other experience, work, life, whatever, relationships. It's crazy to me that I've never been able to, I hope I never do replicate it, but it's never been replicated. You know, going through the leadership program we all did, just kind of getting a whole, you know, my life just shifted in the sense of responsibility and gratitude. And so I was able to kind of, you know, still have some tough swings in poker, but just try to not let it affect me as bad, and still be appreciative of the fact that I got to play poker, and I got to be on stake, and I got to live in San Diego, and you know, when Savannah, my girlfriend, came around, I got to be in a great relationship. So there was always the way to like flip that, you know, which that helped a lot.
Definitely. And when you left poker, it wasn't like a smooth thing into real estate. You definitely had some times of like not making money, or, you know, I mean, we all just don't like enter something and then all of a sudden are making a ton of money. Talk to me about your decision to leave poker, and if you were second guessing it, or like how that path to real estate went for you.
Yeah, well, my path to leaving poker was 3 years before that. I mean, getting into poker, I always knew it wasn't going to be my end all. It was kind of like a means to an end. It got me to San Diego. I was super grateful for that. But the first transition out of poker was into internet marketing, and I was doing that for about 2 years. And ultimately that just didn't work out. It was just kind of conflict of ethics, you can call it, and just kind of realized I got to transition again. And at the time, my girlfriend and I were long distance, so I actually decided to move back to where I'm from, San Jose, which is when I went under stake with Andrew. So that was another like year and a half of playing poker, and the goal was once we moved to San Diego, get into real estate.
Did you meet like someone in particular that kind of helped guide you out of poker, or you just like blindly said, I'm going to go into real estate and figure it out?
No, the real estate thing, I mean, I don't know anyone who like is born or grows up and is like, I'm made for real estate. It's something you tried, and either you just don't like it or you love it. So I just had enough people that I trust tell me I'd be good at real estate. And finally it was one of my mentors who's a commercial broker, you know, and I was like, I got nothing to lose and I trust these people. And, you know, I kind of had done my research. And so, yeah, it was mostly just people giving me advice that I'd be good at it.
I think one of the skills that translates well that I saw in you at the poker table was you were someone that could connect with people.
Yeah.
And you developed relationships with people from the table, off the table. And, you know, I remember there was a story of us being up in San Jose, and we ended up going to a Golden State Warriors basketball game for free because of someone that you connected with at the poker table.
Yeah.
And those kind of things are definitely going to translate to real estate. Mm-hmm. Would you say that was probably like the number one thing that was a transition for you? That helped you transition?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if there's one thing I can coin for myself, like the best asset that I have, it's relationships. You know, I've just always had a knack or just the ability just to connect with people, and not for any reason, but just to enjoy that relationship and that person. You know, so kind of every every city I've lived in, I've just been able to develop a circle of great people. You guys being one of them. I actually like to kind of brag that, because I did, we all did partying in our days, and I'm like, I like to say that my partying was beneficial to where I am now, because every drink I had with someone, every time we went out, it led to that relationship getting that much more developed, and that's maybe that's what led me to go to that leadership program, which led me to meet the mentor who got me into real estate. So I like joking about that.
So you did have a mentor that you would call a real estate mentor?
Yeah, back then he was just more like same thing, like a big brother, close friend. He's a mentor now because he's very successful in real estate. I'm doing real estate. So, I mean, just last week, I'm kind of constantly asking him questions about just, how his perspective on life and work. And, actually we're talking about relationships. Last week I was asking him, do you separate work and relationships and friendships? So do you have, with your clients, do you have like a firm line, like this is going to be a business relationship, or do you allow them to be friends if the relationship is there? And his answer was he does 90% of his work with friends. So it's interesting because there's a lot of people that don't have that same philosophy, and I'm very much the former. For me, if I can do business with people I love and trust, I think it's just going to make for better business and relationships.
Yeah, I actually can relate to this mixing business and relationships thing. I've been running an online meetup game every week ever since COVID lockdown happened. It's been almost a year now since we've been doing this, and because it's become like a home game, and it started out as like a way to get people together and play poker. Because like live poker was gone, I needed to play poker, so I got all these people together, and now they've become like friends. And at first it started out as like a business thing. And now like I've given everyone my phone number, and we like talk weekly, and we're all in all these group chats together.
Yeah.
So I think that sometimes, business and relationships are just synonymous. And it sounds like that's exactly what happened with you in real estate. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think in my 3 years or so, there's people that I definitely call my friends. And it's just kind of like, it doesn't have to be just because it's work. I just treat it like any other relationship. And if I feel the energy is good there, it's being reciprocated, there's trust there, then I'm okay with, pursuing or seeing how the relationship goes. And, I definitely have great friends now that I've made through real estate that were clients.
To me, one of the most fascinating things about what you've done is you went from one industry that you'd spent a decade in studying, being profitable, building up all this equity into who you are, and then you just switched over into this internet marketing thing, tried to figure that out, had some success at that, moved away, and then you moved into an industry you knew nothing about. So I'm just kind of curious about, and I think probably a lot of people are curious about, what are some of the challenges that you face when you walk away from something and you go into something like real estate? Was there anything in particular that maybe came up for you that you were able to work through?
Yeah, well, there's two ways to look at it. I mean, there's the battles that you have starting a real estate career, and then there's the battles that you have transitioning from anything into something else, usually. So for real estate, I mean, I felt like the one thing that kind of set me up for success is the brokers that I started with. They told me, don't expect to make any money for the first 18 months. And I was like, okay, cool. So for me, I was like, beat zero. Like just get a paycheck in the first 18 months and you're doing better than like the norm, right? So it helped me just to understand that I was just gonna have to grind. It was just cold calls, like just a year of just cold calls and going on meetings, and that's how you start a real estate career. So that was challenging for sure, because it's just, you go from making income to not making any income and having to like bust your ass to just get to a point where you can start to get deals done.
And those deals, a lot of times they, you make a cold call, you build a relationship in, a couple of minutes on the phone, follow up with it. When you get one of those people on the phone, how often does it lead to, a good conversation? And do a lot of those deals fall through? And then like, what's that process like when you get into something and you have a deal going? Is that a really common thing in your industry?
I mean, the goal of a cold call is just to create a relationship, right? To start having someone that I can call, they know who I am, and at some point, if they do a deal, I'm someone they think about, right? So that's the general goal. You can get lucky where you cold call someone and they're looking to sell or buy and doing a transaction right there. But typically, you know, from cold call to paycheck can be anywhere from 3 months at the earliest, maybe call it 2 months, to like 10 years, like easily. You know, there's people that you just have to talk to every single 6 months, and then finally 10 years later they call you and they're like, hey, I'm ready to do this. So, and even if you engage, I mean, I had people that were ready to sell the day I talked to them, and it was still a paycheck a year and a half later because of whatever reason. So yeah, real estate's all long-term. As far as being a broker, it's interesting that way.
What about all of the people you talked about from phone call, first reaching out to paycheck? What about all the people that you reach out to? Like, what percentage of people do you reach out to that actually gets the paycheck? It's got to be astronomical. You got to be told no so many times, right?
Oh yeah, no, I would say 99% of the calls I do every day are just, you know, they're not going to go anywhere until later on. So maybe if I get like 3 leads on a day, that's a good day. You know, if I have something to work on, 3 people, 3 different contacts, that's a really good day. Interesting.
Okay, so I don't think we distinguish that you're in commercial real estate versus residential real estate.
Yeah.
Or multifamily. Is that the same as commercial?
Yeah, talk about exactly
Okay.
what you're doing right now in real estate.
Yeah, so commercial, you got different, you know, niches. You have office, you got retail, you got industrial, and then you have multifamily. Okay. Multifamily can be like a bunch of condos, or it could be apartments. Typically it's apartments, so I'm an apartment broker is what I focus on.
Okay, and as an apartment broker, your primary way to make money is selling an apartment, right?
It's representing someone who either sells or buys property.
Or both, right? You can do both as well. Can you rep the buyer and the seller?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay, so but you've done some dabbling like outside of that model, right? Where you've been an investor and like this is what I wanted to talk about with Andrew, who he was an investor through fractional ownership of a property. Can you talk a little bit about that model?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I chose commercial and not residential. And this is just like personal. I could be totally wrong, but I feel like if you're successful in commercial real estate, you're going to learn how to create wealth and learn how to invest and learn the value of money. So just from the jump, you know, as a commercial broker, the goal was always to do well enough as a broker that you can start investing and owning property yourself. You know, whether it's like short-term flips or long-term holds, but just create passive cash flow through ownership of real estate. So I would say that last year, 2020, my goal was to do well enough to have money to invest. And concurrently, I had, you know, a lot of friends that were kind of following me my journey and were also willing to invest. And it was just, they were waiting for me to have, you know, a chunk of change where, hey, if you find a deal and you're in, like, let me know, I'll invest with you. And so we're in escrow now on his 20-unit deal in City Heights, and that was an interesting story because I was repping, to your point, I was repping the buyer and the seller. It was off market. Actually, that's probably one of my more successful cold calls because I talked to this guy, and I had talked to him before, but it had been like a year, and I was shopping for properties in that area. Call him, and he was looking at, you know, a certain price, had a good buyer, and we got an escrow within like a week. So that's like as quick as it can go, right? For a pretty big property too. And then it was interesting because it was like 5-6 weeks of due diligence with this buyer who ultimately walked away. But by the time he walked away, I was really comfortable with the deal and was ready to go. It was just like, it was a little more money than I was expecting to spend on a property, meaning that I had to raise a lot more money or not a lot more, but significantly more than I had planned to. But yeah, basically raised $1.5 million in 4 days. Mm-hmm. It was like, hey guys, this could become available, so be ready. And here's kind of like an intro to the deal. And literally like next day I was like, oh, it's ready. We're raising all this money. Like here's everything you need to know. Let me know if you're down.
It sounds like it was just like something that came because of opportunity. You know,
Yeah.
like standard in your position would be to sell or buy, right? And then when that model fell apart, you kind of took a step back and said, okay, the buyer part fell apart. How can I solve this, number one? And number two, can I solve it and make some money while solving it? And that sounds like that's what you did, because now you're essentially the buyer, and it's going to be something that can produce cash, produce equity, and for the people that have invested in it, like yourself as well.
Yeah, I was a part of the syndication deal as well, and I'll tell you that for Christy and myself, like, we would not have done the deal if you didn't have money in the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that we didn't trust you, or that, you know, we were worried about something that you maybe hadn't done the numbers right or something. It was more just a product of, like, we were kind of on the fence. It was a pretty big investment for us, and the fact that you put a good portion of your own money in, it was kind of the thing that pushed us over the edge to say, like, Flo is really in this thing. He believes in this. I trust this guy. I know he's done his work. And I think that's really great that you did that.
I appreciate it.
Where do you see yourself really exploding in the real estate market? Do you see yourself executing this model that you just executed over and over, or are there some exploits that you see in the real estate market that, like, you're going to pursue that you haven't pursued yet?
Yeah, I mean, I can just say I'm, like, super excited about real estate because there's so much available. You know, as a broker, I love doing deals. So my probably my number one focus every day is, how do I become one of the best brokers in San Diego? Do a bunch of deals, right? So that's a focus. And then to touch on that, you know, what are people not doing right now? I think that for us, the reason why cold calling is so successful is we're dealing with people who pick up their phones and who just mostly operate from their phones, right? Our generation is kind of like next in line. And so cold calling, while it will still be prevalent, you know, other things will start to creep in, like the social media, YouTube, just all the things that you're doing. So definitely a goal of mine to implement that in my brokerage, and as well as on the investor side. So, you know, for me personally, I want to buy a deal a year, whether it's myself or through Syndicate. You know, and I think that basically the way syndicators grow, you do a good job on the first one, you make people a bunch of money, you just grow. Like, they're going to tell their friends, you know, you build a brand, you tell people what you're doing. So I see kind of those are all three of the things that I'm pushing, that are on my mind every day right now for real estate.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is actually something that Gary Vee talks about. So the people that have the money, own the properties, they're generally like baby boomers and older generation, and they use the phone. They, like, call on the phone. They expect, you know, people to leave voicemails and things like that. But there's a transfer of wealth going on in the country right now where younger people, our generation, are starting to make some money, you know, and as a result, where do we spend our time? Like, if somebody calls me, something's wrong.
It's a robot.
or it's a scam or something, you know, a Nigerian prince.
Me. You want to buy property.
So it's I like that you're saying that, you know, the thought is that you're going to transition into more, you know, social media type things, or, you know, things that are relevant to people that are going to have the money going forwards. The current brokerage that you're at, that wasn't the first brokerage that you went to, right?
No, second. Yeah. So
was there some trials and tribulations?
Yeah, okay. That was like a huge part of my success too. So, like, the first brokerage I was at, you know, it was a friend from high school who was branching out, starting his own brokerage. It was a fit because, again, just being someone who's a sponge, it was more of an apprenticeship type of start into the commercial real estate. You know, typical start for people in real estate is you're given, like, the apartment directory, and you're told, okay, go cold call, you know, find leads. And typically it's for a senior broker, someone above you. So a lot of people are cutting their teeth. A lot of people are quitting. There's not a lot of, you know, value placed on these juniors. Whereas for me, there was a lot of training on, again, how to make money through apartments, how to be a good broker, how to cold call efficiently. So It was really valuable in the sense of the initial broker training in my career. Ultimately, I left. I just, I took a lot of L's that first year,
What exactly does an L mean?
Is an L? Yeah. So I was kind of giving you that continuum of like cold call to paycheck, right? So basically, I was doing really well with cold calls. I was going on a bunch of meetings. I was driving up business, and then it'd be a proposal meeting where it's like, hey, let's get the listing, or if it was an off-market deal, whatever, like an offer or something, and it just would never transcend into a paycheck. And ultimately, after it happened X amount of times, X being a big number, I went out and just by that time I knew who the players were in town and had formed some relationships. So I was like, hey, this is my experience. I'm kind of doing all this, but I haven't done a single deal. Like, what's wrong here? And a lot of it was just kind of based on the leadership of your brokerage, and not to knock the guys, but I think that they were still kind of young in their own careers and hadn't established themselves to the point where they were, doing the type of business that I wanted to be doing. So it was a goal of mine, be under someone that's a crusher in San Diego.
Yeah.
And so that was like the next step, was like, okay, I went, interviewed all around town, did another set of commercial real estate resume, ultimately landed with a guy who's 37. He's been in the business 15 years. He's a household name. He owns real estate himself. He said the word gratitude in our first 5 minutes, which was like, no one says that word. Like, we just kind of struck a relationship. So, so that was December 2019, and literally just the next 2020, deals started flowing.
So the first brokerage that you went to, what was the period of time where you were doing the cold calls and it wasn't materializing into paychecks for you?
I mean, I was there 18 months. I did 2 deals there. I did beat zero. I like the first deal I did was 7 months in, but it was still
not being able to really
I made my first year, I made 24K. That's nothing,
that's tough. And I think that when they frame it as don't expect to make any money your first 18 months, they're almost setting you up for failure. Maybe they honestly believe that. Maybe that was your path. But I think when you place restrictions on yourself like that, don't expect to, when you tell a poker player, don't expect to win when you go sit at the table. That's probably not good for confidence. It's probably not good for their game overall. Would you say that that's fair?
Yeah, I would say that it's very tricky. Because on one, it was what I needed to hear, because I'm the type of person, when you tell me what's normal, I'm going to try to beat it. So they were like, you're not going to make any money in your first 18 months. I was like, no, I'm going to make money for sure. And so I was able to do that. But for sure, I think that they were also projecting their own experience, because there are people that they get in and right away they're doing deals, so I think they were projecting their own experience, which then, if you don't have the mindset of beat that, you just kind of settle into oh, it's okay, I haven't done any deals this year, that's what's supposed to happen. That's where the pit comes in the trap, so
yeah. And you had a 10-year poker career, mostly on some with a little off, and it probably was easy to think, well, I can always go back to poker. I mean, it had happened before where you tried something and you made good money at it, but just felt like it wasn't for you, and you came back to poker. Were you nearing that breaking point in real estate?
No, I don't think so. I was, because when I was, again, even through all those L's, I loved real estate and I saw the value. So it was more, what do I need to fix? What's the adjustment? So it was never I'm quitting. That was never in my mind. It was more I need to go to a different shop. I need to try a different strategy out. So
I think what's interesting about this as well is something that we actually talked about on the first episode was Andrew had been making a career in poker for a long time, but he was kind of plateaued a little bit. And he met someone, Jonas, you obviously know who Jonas is, we talked about it in the last episode, who was a bigger mentor for you, someone who helped you go from that level to a higher level. And it sounds like that's exactly what happened with you. I mean, it happened with you in poker. I wasn't nurturing you in poker. I was providing you a bankroll and helping you with your mindset, and you did well. And Andrew took you on and helped you with your game as well. But it sounds like the person that brought you into real estate kind of helped you along the way a little bit, but you needed someone else or some other brokerage to really tap your potential even higher.
Yeah, I mean, it's the broker that I'm under now. I just, it's for me, when you're looking to be successful in something, it's about find the person that you want to emulate, or find the person that you want to be like, right? And then just emulate what they do. And so, my current broker's approach to life, real estate, his grind it's infectious. And I would also give credit to the office. Like there's other guys in there, and it's a really good energy. We're all sharing deals, which wasn't really there at the first place as well. So I would say for sure the broker that I'm under now has been kind of like that guy to just like keep copying, like do what he does and ride his coattails, so to say.
I had a question about the old wise tale that what everyone says is that real estate is, or buying a home is the best investment that you can make. It's like what all the baby boomers told us growing up. Buy a home.
By the way, they proved to be right, because, when I was looking to rent apartments in Venice at the beach, everybody that I talked to was in their 60s and 70s and owned the house since the 60s. And,
I think that is valid, especially during their lifetime.
yeah.
But I think that there's a lot of things that are changing with our lifetime. What are your thoughts on your first home being an investment, or buying a home being an investment? Are you on board with that, or do you think things have changed?
Me personally, things have changed. I'll tell you that I have zero desire to go out and buy a home right now that I would live in, unless for some reason it was investment. But I prefer apartments to invest in. The biggest difference that I like to talk to people about is the value of the capital placed to buy whichever property you're buying, right? So if you're buying a home, you're taking hundreds of thousands of dollars as a down payment, and you're paying the mortgage, right? There's no cash flow, and yes, you're building equity, and 30 years later, you're going to have amassed, equity in a property, but you can never capture that money unless you sell the property. Whereas my philosophy is, you buy investment property, your tenants are the people that are paying your mortgage and therefore building your equity and your wealth. It is giving you cash flow, and you can use that cash flow to buy more property or just pay for life expenses. So that's like the number one shift, or not shift, but just, kind of theory about where to put my money in, whether it's in real estate. I would also say, this is more of like a paradigm shift, but our parents, it was so much of, you go to school, you work the same job for 40 years, at some point you'll buy a home, and that's life. And that's changed in so many ways. I mean, even just with school, we'll go to school and we'll get a degree, and we'll do like 5 different things before we find what we're meant to do or meant to be, right? But also in respect to buying real estate, our parents were able to do summer jobs, and by the time they were 21 had enough money to buy a property. Like that, those days are gone, right? It takes so much money now, whether you're buying a home or an investment property, so much capital to put it into a down payment. There's other markets in the country that it's a little easier, but we're in California, it's not a thing. So that's also part of it too, is are people cognizant of the idea that putting all your money into a property that you're going to live in, is that the best, placement for your funds, right? Because the whole point of being house poor, I think, is like the term now that people use. So that's what all my friends are struggling with. They're living at home. Maybe their parents have to chip in. So yeah, a lot of things have changed for our generation and ongoing, I would say.
So I think one of the biggest hurdles for me and a lot of other people is the barrier to entry in real estate, especially here in California, when every home is multi-millions of dollars. You're talking commercial, 20 units. I mean, now you're getting into like amounts that just the average person struggles to get in. And we can buy a stock for $1. You could buy a piece of a cryptocurrency for cents, but you can't buy into the real estate market for $1. So I think that's been one of the things that has scared off a lot of people from an investment strategy standpoint. What's your rebuttal to that? Do you think that it's too large, or do you think that it's still something that everybody can get involved in?
Not only can they, it's like they should. I think that it's all education, and I know that for a lot of poker players who are sitting with a lot of cash, it's like, what do I do with it? I want to get out. I want to do something different. And a lot of it is like an onus on that person to like go out and figure out the resources available to them. But the easiest thing is what we just did is, find people that you trust, or there's other syndications, right? There's a lot of groups. Grant Cardone, who I'm sure a lot of people who follow you will know who that name is, probably one of the top syndicators in the country. So whether it's that guy or just a friend of yours who's a broker who's also syndicating deals, the whole point of it is you're putting your money into something that's going to make you money, whether it's $5,000 or $200,000, whatever you have. As long as you're working with someone who's fair, you should be making the same amount of money.
So 5,000 is actually a number that like some syndicates offer.
What was the smallest number in your syndicate?
I had one person at 5K. I had, I believe, 2 people at 10K.
Are there a lot of people doing this, or?
Yeah, I had 22 investors, which is a large amount.
But I'm just saying, like, as someone who doesn't have a network and I wanted to participate in a syndicate project, is that going to be hard for me to find?
Most of them, it's going to be hard for you to find the ones that are kind of more mom and pop, which tend to be more fair in their fees. Like the Grant Cardones, like the pro syndicate, if you just like Googled, I want to put my money into a real estate syndication. A lot of the EV is just eaten up by fees, right? So
how would I even find that? Just go on Google, like San Diego Property Syndicate?
Yeah, I'm sure, again, like a lot of what we do as syndicators is building a brand. So that will entail some SEO, I'm sure. So yeah, I had a friend of mine who is an investor sent me actually a Grant Cardone deal, and we had vetted it, got on the phone with one of their brokers, and ultimately because of like the fees, and it was an okay deal. Like it's still making you money, but there's better avenues to put your money in. But yeah, the point is, just to backtrack, I didn't want to say no to anyone. It was like the first one, I'm building something here and I wanted it to be fun and inclusive. So to the person who was in for 5K, like, cool, well, we welcome everything.
You also reduced your fees a lot.
Yeah, I slashed the commissions out of the deal to make it a better price at acquisition. So yeah, but the point is, whether it's that person investing the 5K or like my top investor was 250K, they're making the same amount of money. They're the same return. And that's the point, is if you have money that's sitting, cash gets you zero. It's a term that Grant Cardone actually says. It's like there's no return for cash, right? It just sits there. And if you want to be liquid for some reason, maybe that makes sense. But if you're just sitting there, and this kind of relates to poker players with a bunch of cash, it's like, ask yourself, what could I put that in? Whether it's, again, 5K or 250K. The point is, once you amass all these different investments and they're spitting you passive cash flow and building you equity, that's where you start.
So as someone that's overseeing the syndicate, you ultimately have decision making over, everything related to the property, right? And then if you're going to sell, like, is there like a board of directors? Like, how does that work?
No, everything is on my shoulders. So yeah, that's kind of, it's asset management really. Like it's up to me to pick the property manager and vet insurance carrier providers and manipulate the rents in such a way that it's spitting out X amount of cash flow. And yeah, ultimately, disposition, selling the property is also something that falls on my shoulders. And that's something that, the investors trust me with. I think that my edge is that I'm a broker, so I'm in the space, I'm doing deals, I understand, how to create wealth in the San Diego market. And I can offer that to people who maybe want to invest, but they just don't know how to invest in real estate. Right? Because that's, to your point, is first of all, you have to get to a point where you can afford to invest in real estate. And then it's like, well, where do I put that money in? You got things like Bigger Pockets, which is like the #1 kind of forum for real estate investing. But it's like, it'd be like someone trying to learn how to play poker off 2+2. Like there's so much out there, and it's like, how do I apply this to what I'm actually doing and what's available to me? So you got to be careful with like how you
Another question specifically with the syndicate, because I'm really intrigued by this model. Let's say that I invested X amount of dollars, let's call it 10,000, and a family emergency came up or something like that. Are there options to exit or like sell your share, or like how does that work?
Yeah. So yes and no. So yes, in the sense that if you want to sell your share, you can sell it to someone in the group directly, or if you want to bring someone outside, they have to be vetted by the manager. But no, in the sense that if you don't find someone, your share remains. Like no person will have a unilateral ability to sell a property if they just want to be out, because that would just put everyone's investment at risk.
Interesting. Okay. Definitely sounds like something that the average person can get involved with. And I honestly didn't even really know about this model until you brought it to Andrew and I. And ultimately, I wasn't in a place liquid wise to invest, but I'm excited that you're in there.
He didn't believe, bro.
Well, you had a lot of your money in crypto. So right now, we're all just kind of having our money do things for us, which is something that I haven't done in a long time. And I just feel like it's pretty common, especially among poker players, because we don't grow up learning about money or how it works. I always thought I'm going to make money, I'm going to take that money, then I'm going to retire.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any thought of how that was going to look. And then what I found I ended up doing was I just kept money in boxes, and I was hearing about the stock market, and I was seeing people's, my friend Gary bought a house in Vegas, or all my friends, their property values have gone up so much. And, finally I just said, I got over the fear, and I said, look, this is a good market to get in, and the money's going in, and I've just been finding good ways to do it.
I think it's really cool that your poker path kind of prepared you for real estate, and I'm excited that you're doing big things, making money, and that we've been a part of your journey. And I'm looking forward to potentially future opportunities with you, and thank you for coming on the show. If there's, I don't know if there's one thing that you want to say to the audience to maybe impart some wisdom, maybe where they can follow you, or because I know that social media is eventually going to be a thing in the commercial real estate. You're obviously not really a social media person right now, but it could be something in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to find me, I work for the Brower Group, BROWAR. I will certainly be doing some more social media stuff. I guess I'm a big believer in providing content, in the spirit of hopefully doing future business with someone. So for me, I spend a lot of time, way more than the average person or broker, I would say, just being a resource and answering questions. We have to be very cognizant of how much time we're spending with people, but I love that. And so, to any of your viewers, if they have questions on what to do, or they're interested on what we're doing as far as our first deal, I'm happy to be a resource and answer those questions. So
I would add one thing that I think is really valuable. Just from the outside looking in, you posted a lot on Instagram when you would sell a property. You'd have a picture of it, and then you'd often write like a nice little description about what it sold for, the process, something like that. And, as someone who follows you, I would see them pop up over the years. And I didn't think a lot about it other than, a like and great job, keep going. But then when you reached out to me to do a deal, that was in my mind. I was already like, Flo does deals. Flo, he's in there, he's selling. Even if you had been selling, but you were never posting on Instagram, it would have been kind of coming out of left field for you to come into me and say, hey, do you want to do this deal? I think I would have had a lot more trepidation. So
especially with the timeline, it was like, hey, we have a week. Are you in or out?
Yeah.
No, that was a huge part of 2020 as well, because a lot of simultaneous goals, but a lot of, part of it was, establish yourself as an authority within my own network. I don't even know if I know any other multifamily brokers, whether it's in San Diego or before I got in, right? Whether in San Diego or somewhere else. So I thought it'd be cool to just kind of share a process. And it was never bragging. It was just like, hey, here's the experience of someone selling real estate or buying or being the buyer or the seller of the property. And yeah, it kind of, that process of that week where we raised the money, I mean, it was so easy because I had already kind of done the legwork of people trusted that I had some level of success and knew what I was talking about. And then it was just people, we were friends, right? So I just the track record of being in integrity and trustworthy. So.
Yep. Like I said, thank you very much for coming on the show. And we will see you soon, brother.
No doubt.
All
Until
right.
then,
Let's go.
make sure you embrace the grind, obviously.
Stay embracing.
This guy's all grind all day, man.
All grind all day.
I'ma give it all I got, all